The latest on Nico Iamaleava continues to develop. The saga gets even more interesting and not really good on either side on a Friday. Here's the latest of what we have with Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Friday evening, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane, and doing a little bonus show here on a Friday because there has been a whole lot that's transpired so far in the latest with Nico Iamaleava, Tennessee's quarterback. On Friday's show, we kind of addressed the Pete Nakos report from On3 about how Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava was in negotiations for a new NIL deal. And we just kind of took that report and we reacted to it. We responded to it. We discussed it right here on the show. We kind of looked at, why from a fan's perspective, it's just getting really, really tiresome, this era of college athletics. Well, there's been a lot of new developments here on a Friday, and we got to react and kind of do the same thing in that regard. And kind of where does that leave us for Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava? We'll discuss all that here on the little bonus content of Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here, you everydayers, for making the show what it is. Not a very fun day to be a Tennessee fan. I will, obviously, I'm understanding of that. But if you want just kind of a comprehensive guide of what all's been going on, listen up. We'll do it here for the next 15 minutes or so. All right, so here's what we know about Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava. So the big story from Friday is Nico did not show up at spring practice Friday morning. Didn't show up. I don't think he told anybody. I think coaches and players were both surprised, shocked. That I don't think that was a planned absence, okay? And so that's the biggest story here on a Friday. Now, what led to that? Well, let's go back. Of course, mentioned here in the open, Pete Nakos On3, he reported on Thursday that Nico Iamaleava was in negotiations for a new NIL deal. And from that, you had disputes from members of his family, from people close to the situation, family friends, I guess is how I would kind of describe that. One of which was Cordell Landers, who used to be a staffer at the University of Florida with the Gators, and very high in terms of I believe he's a coach as well. Works in recruiting and whatnot. But he kind of came out there. He denied the report from Pete Nakos at On3. Nico's father was on Twitter, and he denied the report from On3's Pete Nakos. This was all late on a Thursday night, kind of into Friday morning, to be completely honest with you. So there was that. And, of course, there was a CBS Sports article as well that kind of cited those two parties and, kind of put out a story there on a Thursday night saying the latest, so-and-so shoots down negotiation reports, all that and more. So that was happening on a Thursday night. And then, of course, we get here on a Friday morning, and Nico Iamaleava is not at Tennessee football spring practice. Awesome or VolQuest, really, the entire site VolQuest reported that Nico wasn't at practice on Friday morning, and then it was the who's who. I mean, Pete Thamel reported it, Chris Lowe reported it. Pretty much every credible media outlet, also put out a report that Nico Iamaleava was not at practice on a Friday morning. And then there's this from Chris Lowe. Chris Lowe, ESPN, he puts out his report that Nico's not at practice on a Friday morning, and his initial tweet was this, quote, Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava, amid reports that he wanted to renegotiate his NIL deal, did not show up at Friday morning's practice, sources have told ESPN, and it was a surprise to Tennessee staff members and players. Iamaleava's reps denied Thursday that there was any renegotiation talk. Okay, so we kind of just went over that. In a series of tweets, this is the second one from CeeLo. Quote, Iamaleava's reps were adamant Thursday to news outlets that there was no NIL renegotiation going on. But sources tell ESPN there has been growing frustration among the administration and the players about the situation, especially when Iamaleava did not show up for practice. And then the final tweet that I want to bring onto the show here and kind of react to. This is from Chris Lowe on Friday afternoon, early afternoon. Quote, right before the winter portal closed, Iamaleava's reps wanted to see his deal up to $4 million range. And again, this time as the spring portal opens on Wednesday. And this is according to sources. Tennessee officials said they weren't going to blink. quote, weren't going to blink. Again, that is Chris Lowe, ESPN reporter, and of course, has been around Tennessee athletics for quite some time. He put kind of a accumulation of all of his reports in a story up on the front page at ESPN.com on a Friday, but those were the big reports there from Chris Lowe. So where does that leave us? Went from, and this was on social media, I believe it was Joey Halsley, Tennessee quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator. I believe he put this out on his, I think he put a picture out on Instagram, but it was George McIntyre who shared it on his story. There was a position group meeting or a position group dinner at Coach Joey Halsley's house on Thursday night. And you had the quarterbacks there, and you had Joey Halsley there and his family. I mean, there's a picture. They're standing on the front porch, of his house. He took a picture. That was Thursday night. And so you went from that, and of course the story from Pete Nakos had already been out a couple hours, but you went from that to not showing up to practice on a Friday morning. And at the time of this recording, and I meant to say this at the top, this is a developing story, okay? And this is why I kind of waited as long as I could before jumping on here on a Friday, afternoon, about to be evening, because things are continuing to develop. So by the time you guys watch this or listening to this, maybe things have already developed from there on. And that's important to remember here. But you went from that, being with your teammates and your coaches, your coach at his house for dinner, to not showing up Friday morning for practice. Man, that's something. So the feel, the vibes as of a Friday afternoon, the transfer portal window opens on Wednesday. Okay. There's been no reports. There's been nothing out there that says Nico Iamaleava intends to enter the transfer portal. There's been none of that at the time of this recording. What we do know right now is Tennessee held practice on a Friday morning and Nico wasn't there. So since Nico wasn't there on a Friday morning, don't believe Nico's going to be at the orange and white game tomorrow. Nobody from Tennessee has issued a statement. Nobody has commented on this from Tennessee's side. I assume the first time we're going to hear anything about this ordeal from Tennessee's side will be from Josh Heupel postgame. And I would assume Josh Heupel will probably come in with a prepared statement. And he's going to say something like, hey, we don't want to make this the Nico Iamaleava press conference. We want to talk about this orange and white game that just happened. I'll say my statement and we'll move on. And so, man, it's kind of a holding pattern right now. Where is Nico? Is he still in town? Did he go back home to California? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows right now. Could Tennessee be, meeting with Iamaleava and all that at some point later today, potentially? But I do know this morning, Nico not going to practice, that was not planned. And as, Chris Lowe and VolQuest reported, it caught coaches and players by surprise. So that's kind of where we're at right now. It's kind of a crappy situation. And I want to go back to one of the tweets there from Chris Lowe saying Iamaleava's reps were adamant Thursday. No news outlets there that were news outlets that there was no NIL renegotiation going on, but sources tell ESPN that there's been a growing frustration about the situation, especially when Iamaleava didn't show for practice. So that's not great. We live in an era of, I respect my brother and my brother's got to go do this. And, he's got to go, do the best, for him and all that. And then that's fine. But when is enough, at least for the locker room? I don't know. Not a good day on Friday. Not a good day on Friday whatsoever. And, was hoping that there would be some clarity and some finality to this on a Friday. That's not been the case so far. We're going to come back. We'll continue this conversation, the latest with Nico Iamaleava, and really I want to focus in on what is happening around the country in terms of renegotiation, NIL deals, and what does this mean for the 2025 Tennessee Volunteers, okay? We're just talking about what we know so far, and this is a developing story, but we're going to continue to hit on this when we come back right here on Friday evening, Locked On Vols. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible File every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worryings. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available at TurboTax Live, full service, real-time updates, only an iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Again, one more time, that is TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, so kind of gone over the timeline here. Again, it was Pete Nakos that first reported from On3. This was Thursday afternoon that Nico is in current negotiations to re-up his NIL deal. You had some denials there from Nico's father on social media and a close family friend as well, saying that was not true. Friday morning, okay, Nico does not show up to Tennessee's practice. You had Chris Lowe of ESPN, tweet out a series of things that, putting the reported number of where Nico's camp wanted his NIL, number to be. And then that by Chris Lowe was reported to be $4 million, and that Tennessee wasn't going to blink in that regard. So that's kind of where we are right now. And it's not a good position to be in. And I do want to say this. So now there's been reports out there, a lot of reports out there that Nico re-upped his deal back in December. I mean, that is not to be the case, according to, the VolQuest.com and my colleagues over there. I mean, that has not been the case. He has been working under his same NIL agreement since he came to Tennessee. Now, that was a big number. That was a big number, a very big number. But since then, the market's changed, right? And you've got people resetting the market and resetting it, just like NFL free agency, right? Every time the next quarterback's up for free agency, a big name, they're going to reset the market. That's kind of where you are right now. And so, you've got a lot of players, not just Nico, you got a lot of players all across the country, specifically quarterbacks that are re-upping their deals and, trying to negotiate a new NIL number, especially trying to get in before the House settlement comes in as well. So this isn't anything that just happens at Tennessee. This is happening all over the place. So I wanted to get that, kind of out there, in the forefront there. But I did not sit here, even on a Thursday when, Pete Nakos reported it out there and, he was taking a lot of hits and a lot of people were upset with his reports, on a Thursday. I mean, I thought this would all be wrapped up and ready to roll here on a Friday at some point. And that's not been the case. In no way, shape, or form did I think Nico was not going to be at practice on a Friday morning, that Nico would miss the orange and white game. But as we currently broadcast right now, that's what it feels like. And so it begs the question. The spring transfer portal window opens on Wednesday. At this current time, I wouldn't say vibes are high. At this current time, it certainly doesn't feel like this is got a good chance of working out. I mean, from a fan's perspective, right? We talked about that on the show yesterday. Like, it would be incredibly tough to overcome this from the fans. It would be incredibly tough to overcome this from, people going to that stadium and people watching at home and, people who are donating to the collective and people who are paying the talent fees and people who are paying, all this money for season tickets and all that. This whole situation is kind of gross and it stinks. And it would be really, really tough to overcome that from a fan's perspective. Also, if Nico were to get this resolved, he's Tennessee's quarterback. Every single interception he throws or incomplete pass or dumb decision, it would only be enhanced 10 times what it was last year when he was already, the reported $8 million man, number one player in the country, 5-star in his first year as a starting quarterback. So that's why I consider this still a lose-lose. If Nico were to somehow still be here at Tennessee, it would be really, really tough, in my opinion. If Nico were to enter the portal next week, and again, at the time of this recording, there's been no report saying that he is going to do that or he plans on doing that. There's been no report of that, okay? That's not what this is. But if he were to leave, then, of course, fans would hate him as well. It's a tough situation to be in. It is. And so, but vibes aren't high here on a Friday evening, a Friday late afternoon. We'll see what transpires. Will something else happen or develop later on a Friday night? Will something happen on a Saturday? We'll see. Will there be a report on a Monday morning saying Nico Iamaleava intends to enter the transfer portal? I don't know. There's just none of that to this day. But if that were to be the case, kind of where are you? Where are you? Well, you're looking at a season where Jake Marklinger is your starting quarterback, at least right now. Tennessee would absolutely be evaluating players and prospects via the transfer portal, quarterbacks. At this stage of this of the calendar, there's not a whole lot of moves. Nico is going to be the biggest name and the most talented player by large that's in the spring portal. You just don't see that caliber of player enter the portal in the spring because, again, you've missed spring practice. You're still not going to get on campus until like June. You're trying to play catch up and just to even be a contributor, much less a quarterback. I mean, there's teams out there, I'm sure, that are going to try to get Nico to come if he enters the transfer portal. But for Tennessee, you've got a QB1 that's open for grabs, right? I mean, George McIntyre's here. You got Jake Marklinger, and the odds-on favorite, if this were to happen, would be Jake Marklinger as your starting quarterback heading into the season. But Tennessee would absolutely must bring in a quarterback via the transfer portal. But what's the talent level there? Is it just a body, or is it a guy that's going to come in here and legitimately compete? They're all going to say they're coming in here going to compete and make the room better and all that. And that's great. But is there going to be a guy that legitimately comes in here and pushes Jake Marklinger for the starting job? I don't know. There's just a lot. There's so many things we don't know right now compared to what we do know. And more so than anything, again, I like this roster. I like the schedule makeup for Tennessee next year. I think Tennessee could have been a college football playoff team next year. But if Nico's not your quarterback and that expected jump in his progression and obviously his ability, his game, coupled that with everything else Tennessee has to offer, you take that away potentially, and you're not as good of a football team. Whether you think he was overrated or underrated or properly rated or overpaid or undercompensated, whatever, you're just not as good of a football team. You're certainly not as much of an experienced football team. So, yeah, not a good Friday. It does not feel like this is going to be resolved here on a Friday, but things can change. We've seen stranger things. Okay, we can take a complete 180 later tonight or in the morning, and Nico could still be here, and that could happen. But what we do know, again, is that Pete Nakos reported that Nico and his camp were negotiating a new NIL deal. That again, that is not unheard of. Okay, that is nothing that isn't happening anywhere else with, especially the Power 4 quarterbacks. There was some backlash to that late last night. Okay, Nico doesn't show up for practice Friday morning. That was not planned. Okay, I think it caught the staff and players by surprise. To my understanding and to my knowledge, I don't know if there's been any meetings or communication on a Friday. I don't know. Okay, I don't know if there's any schedule for later tonight. I don't know if there's any schedule for tomorrow. I don't know. And yeah, that's where you are. And so obviously fans are frustrated. Fans are upset. Fans are aggravated. Fans feel betrayed right now. But let's see how all this plays out. But that's kind of the latest that we have right now here on a Friday afternoon. And it goes back to my conversation this morning on the show, how difficult it is for fans just to kind of navigate these waters right now. And I had so many people reach out to me on a Friday and say, man, I hate to be you guys today. Yeah, these are not fun days on the job. That is for sure. These are not like when you jump on a podcast after Tennessee punches its ticket to a Sweet 16. Those are fun. Jump on a podcast at 2:00 in the morning when Tennessee beats NC State in a neutral site, 50-10 or whatever it was, and talk about how this is a really, really good football team. Tennessee beats Alabama for the first time in 16 years. Those are the fun days. Days like today are not fun. But this story is not over. This story continues to develop. And, when the next layer is added, we'll come back and react right here on Locked On Vols. So that is the latest. Hopefully I did a good job of kind of explaining and portraying what's going on right now. Certainly if we don't hear from me or if we don't have another show up this weekend, we'll unravel everything that happened and plus touch on the orange and white game on a Monday morning. But depending on what happens, we'll probably jump out here and do another mini podcast. But that's kind of where we are right now. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening. Appreciate you guys. This is Locked On Vols.